Tea with Tobi. 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 Tea with Tobi.
Welcome to Season 5 of our Tea with Tobi podcast. This season, our focus is all about elevating social care, and we touch on a number of key and topical subjects vital to growing care organisations. On this episode, we're joined by Ben Patrick, Operations Director at Apex Prime Care, and Aaron Briddon, Managing Director at BMB International. And we'll be discussing the best practices of recruiting care workers overseas, and also the journey Apex Prime Care experienced from going from 0 to 120 carers in just 10 months. So without further ado, let's dive in. Welcome to Tea with Tobi. Let's start with a helicopter view introduction of both of our guests, starting with you, Ben.
Hi, I'm Ben Patrick. I'm from Apex Prime Care. I'm the Operations Director for Apex. I do a bit of everything, really, from tech to recruitment to you name it. Not accounting, I'm not good with numbers, but I've come back 4 years ago to help my dad retire.
And what's the size of the company?
About 37 branches, around 1,800 care staff.
About it.
Hi, my name's Aaron Briddon. I'm Managing Director of BMB International Recruitment. We've got offices in the Philippines and the UK and Canada. We've been operating since 1998. We've got around 25, 30 clients in the UK and Canada at the moment. We've deployed around 8,000 care staff, care professionals, different disciplines. And I can go in a little bit about sort of the history of our company a little bit. Yeah. So we're a family company. We were started by my mother, who was one of the first Filipino nurses to be recruited back in around 73, 74. We operate quite an ethical level of recruitment based off her experiences. She had to apply by herself, apply for her own visa, book her own air tickets, find her own travel from Heathrow to Leicester at that time. So we take all of that off based off her bad experiences, and we provide the service that she didn't have. So
awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining the show today. In Tea with Tobi fashion, we're going to dive straight in. And Ben, I'm going to come straight to you. You've been super busy. In my notes, I had you went from 0 to 120 overseas care recruits in 10 months, but you just shared it's 190. Mm-hmm. So before we go into that, can you tell me a little bit more about what challenges you're experiencing within the business from a recruitment perspective to begin with that gave you the idea to start thinking about overseas?
Yeah, so during COVID, we had probably one of our best couple months of recruitment in the UK, but I think that was mainly because of no one being able to work. So being a carer, I mean, they could be out, they could be socialising because they were a key worker. After those 3 months went, it kind of just a quickly downward spiral from people going back to their own industry, to hospitality becoming more competitive because workforce in general just became this gold mine, really, and everyone was kind of going everywhere else. So I got to around, I think, September after kind of COVID disappeared and just recruitment was just non-existent in terms of UK. So I saw an advert that I think it was Care Talk advert that Aaron had put out in terms of recruiting now, and we just gave it a go. Before that time, it was the senior care workers on the list, and at the time of this, all the offices were actually covering care work as well as doing their office work. So there was high burnout in terms of our offices. Everyone was trying to get out of care, and that was their main reason for leaving. It wasn't like normally in care you lose people to other companies. We were actually losing people majority because they just had enough. If you can think, they've gone through COVID, they've gone through a cost of living crisis, and a council offers them 3% pay rise. Well, I know where I'd be going, and that'd be the door. So in terms of that, it's not like that. That's changed in somewhat. We do offer quite a good salary. It's competitive with the likes of Audi, which it shouldn't be. It should be a lot higher than that now anyway. But so we then went with 120 workers from the Philippines, and the deployment was interesting, to say the least. But it actually became such a benefit and such a bonus to the office staff that they went back to doing their normal jobs and covering the care as they should have done. So,
wow. So COVID happened, loads of people came to the care sector because that was the only sector that continued to go on. And then once it sort of died down, people went back, and actually people went to other industries. I think you mentioned Pizza Hut was really, people were logging to pizza all of a sudden in your neck of the woods.
Right.
So what are the benefits? You touched on the benefits of overseas recruitment. What, from your perspective as a care provider, what do you see to be the main benefits?
Well, and in the kind of stats is really 165,000 vacancies, and that doesn't seem to ever change. I think the year before COVID was 120,000 vacancies, so it grew by 45,000. I think the benefit is that you've got people that are coming over that have got care experience, either not professionally or they looked after family, which seems to kind of become a miss in this country. It seems to everyone wants to like more and more time to themselves, and the family kind of comes second. So I think from that, and you also get a really high skilled workforce, especially from the Philippines. There's a lot of the care workers there couldn't pass the nurse exam, which I think you said it was like 60% don't pass or more than that.
Yeah.
And that means that if people that don't pass don't become nurses, become care assistants. So you've got these people that have trained to a nursing level, which then come over. So from that point of view, huge benefit. And also covering this 165,000 vacancies, which I know that a lot of people have been brought over. So I think it might have gone down, but at the same time, the ethical side, which we've mentioned, is trying to work out whether these people that have got money have just started an agency up, brought a lot of overseas workers over, and then can't actually source the work for them. So from that point of view, I think overseas is great, and I think I don't see it going away anytime soon.
Brilliant. Aaron, I'd love to bring you in at this point. There are some care providers who are listening to this now who are probably getting inquiries of people asking for sponsorship, but have never really considered it before. Can you just walk us through what the process is when it comes to hiring care workers from overseas, and also what are the key considerations care providers should be thinking about?
Yeah, well, I think that first of all, you've got to have a look at your vacancy rates, your agency rates, what the costs are, and looking at it from a business value point of view. It is a lot of investment, not just from a financial point of view, but from a time point of view. And you invest a lot, even emotionally. You have to invest yourself a lot. These people are putting their trust into your hands. So it's not a decision that you can take lightly, and you need to make sure that you've got the resources to provide all of the support, not just on the front end, on the recruitment side, on the due diligence with, if you use an agency, but also with the individuals that you're hiring, doing the references, doing the background checks. But more importantly is actually the post-arrival side. So the settlement side, making sure you've got the houses, making sure that things are affordable for them, making sure that really that this is going to be sustainable because you are putting a lot of investment up front. So really you want to make sure that the people that you hire are the right fit for you and are going to stay with you long term, because that's what they want as well. And then once you've decided that might be the right opportunity, then you have to look at UKBA sponsors licenses, getting into the nitty gritty, looking at the cost and the process of certificate of sponsorships, work permits, cost of airfares, everything else. So it initially is just really looking at is that the right position for you, taking those first steps forward.
Brilliant. Ben, I heard a couple of giggles of it from you. You're probably just reminiscing on the process you've been. But can you just share from your perspective how the process has been for you?
Well, we started in the middle of COVID. So the process, you do it now, and I say, yeah, it's lovely.
Yeah.
Some of the things we had to deal with just unbelievable, really. Going back, me and Aaron at one time were like, oh, this group is just cursed.
Well, so at that stage, people were having to do quarantines. There was fast release COVID tests they had to do. They had to do COVID tests before they leave the Philippines, another COVID test when they arrived 24 hours, another COVID test after 5 days, if you remember that.
Yeah.
And then people who were testing positive 24 hours before departure, at one point there was a group of 12 and 6 of them tested positive. Yeah. So we had orientations, we had pickup from airports, flights had to be changed.
That was especially the big thing. So we're having to like rent out a room, and sometimes we wouldn't get there 3 months. But then at the same time as this kind of people do the COVID checks, but then they're going in a spare room in someone's house. It's like, all right, so I've got to get someone that's from a different country and quarantine them in my house while I'm getting rent for them. So it was a very kind of high stress time. And then at the same time, I think the worst one was 3 people on a flight. The one that was on the news, it was going sideways and slammed down. One of them was crying, one of them was throwing up, one was praying because they didn't think they were going to make it. And then the plane buckled and they couldn't open the luggage area.
And then they arrived and got COVID.
Yeah.
Oh,
So I mean, it's already a difficult process.
Yeah, but now I'd say you apply for the visa and 6 to 8 weeks later they arrive. Obviously, you do the interview online. You make sure they can talk English, which they all can. It's perfect. And then you get a really good group of applicants. Like it's 40 hours a week from 10 people that just landed. You say that to a recruiter 5 years ago, they'd be like, "Nah, never going to happen." So especially when you can get 10 people in, it meant that not only did we take the pressure off our office staff, but it took a pressure off the hospitals in terms of hospital beds and families that were looking after family members. So it was a huge benefit, not just to us as a company, but to the community around us.
Aaron, I'd love to get your views on this. You've been doing this since 1998.
Correct.
So you're a veteran in doing this. From your perspective, what are the most common challenges that care providers usually face? And how can they overcome this? What I'm trying to do is have someone listen to this and not have to go through all the challenges that Ben went through, but also like just giving them that foresight and looking back at what to expect.
I think I touched upon it before. I mean, you're going to get, and I'm sure a lot of your listeners will have a lot of applicants applying from overseas already. Finding good quality staff from overseas isn't too difficult. There's a lot of checks and a lot of due diligence that you need to do on that side, but actually the thing you need to put emphasis on is the post-arrival side. So that's everything really from the pre-departure seminar that you would provide them, introductions to managers before they arrive. Ben's got an amazing team. They provide 3 days training from the Philippines whilst their work permits are in process, so that keeps them engaged during the recruitment side. But also it introduces them to their supervisors, their managers, their training providers. It means that they can hit the ground running and hit that 40 hours straight away. And once they arrive as well, I know from our perspective, BMB, we collect from the airport, making sure that culturally there's a bridge. So that might be, if you don't use an agency, finding someone in your team from the country that you're recruiting from, whether it be from India or Africa or the Philippines or other parts of Asia. They need to be that person that they can really speak to in their own language and, speaking their language as well. So that's very, very important, and having those lines of communication, being transparent about the job itself, managing expectations of what the job is going to be, managing expectations of their salaries. Because if you show someone, this is how much you're earning, this is how much you can earn, 40, 50, 60 hours per week sometimes, then you really need to explain tax to them, how much the housing is, how much it is to get around, how much your living costs, and how much really they're going to be taking home. All of that needs to be done just to avoid any problems in the future. That's where it comes in from. And then, even simple things, we provide a food pack, so all of their familiar foods that they've got back in the Philippines, something again which my mother didn't have, but for that first 2-3 weeks, just so that they're up on their feet and they can really just concentrate on doing what Ben wanted, which is the work.
So Ben, let's touch on that. Onboarding any staff, yes, pivotal to the success of organisation, let alone someone who's relocating from overseas. Can you talk to us a little bit about your onboarding process and how to make sure you're set up for success?
Well, the deployment overseas has changed our induction completely. And that's benefit not only to the overseas coming over, but to the new recruits that are coming through, which we're trying to do, as in trying to reduce the demographic of the care workers. Obviously, it's a very aging kind of workforce. And obviously getting the people that are coming through 18, 20 and trying to make them interested, which has happened from the overseas, which is the cultural differences in making it sounds simple, but making a sandwich, making a cup of tea, doing the food that they don't normally do in the Philippines, and then everything else as well that's basically come with it. So yeah, the onboarding has changed drastically just from this. And we have one trainer actually down in Poole that basically spearheaded it. It was where the seniors were trying to basically not pick up the slack, but the things that we missed, the seniors were picking up on, and the seniors do enough as it is. So the seniors were training the extra things like the tea, like just the small things that from a client's basis is exactly their bread and butter. So from that point of view, that we changed the recruitment. So the seniors were doing less and basically showing them how to do it rather than having to do it for them. So,
and credit to your seniors. I remember over dinner one time you were telling me how some of your seniors are even doing driving lessons.
Yeah, everything. So that was a thing that Aaron mentioned when I laughed, actually, that the amount of time investment that goes in. My managers have gone from being care managers to now being tenants, are basically like rental managers and driving instructors, and not it wasn't babysitting, but the amount of sometimes when you move to a country, we've never done it. I don't know anyone that's just up ship and completely moved to a place that's completely culturally different. There was a lot of times 12 o'clock at night you're getting a phone call and talking to like someone how to like fill up a car rather than knocking on the window. They're not going to come out and do it for you. Like there's little things like that which are small, but you didn't think about it when we were putting them in place. So they have the managers almost say now they've got an extended family with the overseas they've got, just because the level of kind of amount of kind of like time they spend talking to them, which I think from a workforce point of view it should extend to everyone, which it does, but we don't really notice it until you put like 20 people that are brand new to the country in one place at one time. So
you used the word family. What did they think about it? Because the seniors, it's diversified the role.
So the seniors, it's more the managers and the office team that have become this like extended. It's just the support, and obviously they can see the benefit of having these people doing 40 hours a week, and obviously picking up the hours from the council, because we're mostly 80% local authority funded, so it's not private. So it's all like helping the councils with that working partnership we already had. So yeah, I'd say that they welcome it. Obviously at the time they were stressed from doing the care hours anyway, but that's all gone away, and they still embrace it now. And I'm always, because I've got 37 managers now, it's just a lot of them are like, when is it my turn to get senior certain? Oh, they all welcome it, yeah. So yeah, I think there's only a select few that haven't actually got some yet. We've got some overseas recruits.
So just to change the gear a little bit, and we've talked from the company's perspective, I want to talk from the resident's perspective. We've actually had a client who started recruiting internationally, and one of the family members expressed concern that her 80-year-old mum, she's hard of hearing, and her concern was, would there be issues from a communication perspective? So question for you, I don't know if you've experienced this, but how can we ensure the communication barriers don't affect the quality of care?
Is it like the level of English?
Maybe accents, especially someone who's hard of hearing.
Yeah, I think now you've got like a lot of technology kind of basis. So there is the writing of care notes. We can talk into the care delivery app and possibly show it to them if that was how hard of hearing they were. But from our point of view, they've got all the English tests they have to pass before they're even given a visa. And we do interview, Aaron will interview his recruits at least twice before I even see them to make sure that level of English is perfect. And then recently we've obviously hired a few people from Africa, and the same thing, like level of English is perfect. And I think it's just working with the senior if they are struggling, or if there's something we can change to basically help the clients. Because I think it is something that's quite a difficult hurdle. We haven't had it specifically, as you say, but from the other point of view, from having these people come in, I've had the clients actually open up their homes for the likes of you thought we were going to get some kind of cultural or racial difficulties. Didn't have that. And also we actually been able to deploy a lot more male carers, because the Filipino male carers were welcomed, which was quite a surprise, and it meant we've been able to employ more males. So there's a benefit, as well as like I can see where the client can come from. And I think in England we're very kind of adverse to change, so sometimes it's quite hard to just get through the door. But once you're there, sometimes it is welcome.
Let's touch on that, because even till today, we're getting care providers who are recruiting in the UK saying we only want females, we only want people of this particular age. You're saying you're seeing some success with male carers. People they're open to it.
I don't know if it's down to the clients or down to our managers being like, because obviously a lot of people in social care, especially our managers, have been there for a long time, and they don't seem to think that it's going to change, or sometimes it's a lot of work to change, but the amount of work they put in to make the overseas recruits feel welcome and be part of the workforce, or part of the Apex family, that we call it, is that it's actually expanded what we've been able to do. And I think that might have opened up their eyes as much as the client. So I think it's a bit of both, really.
Awesome. So we talked about from the company's perspective, talked about from the person receiving care's perspective. Let's actually talk about from the carer's perspective. You know, thinking about these care workers, they're moving their whole lives here to the UK. And it's important that they actually do get a good welcome, not just from the flight that you said, but from the perspective of someone who's, you know, moving to the UK. I would love to know, what are some of the things we need to put in place from a well-being perspective? I'd love to get your views, Aaron. You touched on a little bit on it, but can you just talk a little bit more about how can we make that experience for them the best experience? Before we dive into the answer to that question, did you know 73% of people expect organizations like yours to understand their unique needs and expectations? And a whopping 98% of professionals say that they've benefited from automation as it allows them to save time and focus on more customers. 98%? That's almost everyone. Want to find out more about what your customers expect from your service? Download Salesforce's State of Service report to discover the trends in the market and keep your business in the know. The direct link can be found in the show notes below. Now back to the episode.
Well, coming in, I think that most importantly, you need to be communicating with them before they arrive, even before the interview stage, before they meet the client. They need to be knowing what's the roles that they're going to be doing, the expectations of their job, really everything set before they get put in a position where they're interviewing for a job, just so they're well prepared for the job as well and for the interview. And so they're geared up for what exactly that expectation is going to be. Having those direct lines of communication between, say, Ben's team and the recruit, whether that be through us or whether your listeners are going to be recruiting directly, there needs to be that continuous communication with them, and then post arrival, just making sure that you've got that those lines of transparency that's going to happen. And like I said, Ben's team and Ben's managers have been amazing with that. So for them, they can there's enough of them where they can support each other now. So we were very, very hands-on with the first groups. That's why me and Ben were very busy in end of 2021, beginning 2020, because we wanted to make sure that first group was set. And then what ended up happening was they ended up being the arrival and the welcome party for the next groups. We sort of set a playbook in place for what happens with the next groups of managers. And then they will go to their managers if they've got any issues, and they do. Some of them are going to be away from their families, of course, but also their children, and it ends up being very difficult. So from us, our obligation as an agent, we have a family orientation. So the families actually are involved, and that's something to consider for anybody recruiting overseas, is actually invite the families on that pre-departure orientation. So the families are aware of where they're going and what the expectations are. And if there is any issues, then we can reach across to the family members if needs be. And is really working as one, a triangular relationship between ourselves, the employer, and the recruit to make sure that they have the best chance for success long term.
Brilliant. I want to touch on this because there clearly is a slick process you've had, but there are a lot of horror stories that we hear. I'm hearing horror stories across the sector. You guys have heard horror stories. And I want to touch on that. And I want to touch on ethical recruiting. This care providers are regulated, but the recruitment of overseas care workers isn't regulated. And it's kind of like the Wild West right now.
Absolutely.
Can we just touch on some of the horror stories just to make people aware? Because from my perspective, the more that people know, the more that they can look out for certain things. So are there any horror stories you're aware of? And I'm sure you've already encountered.
Yeah, so a few weeks ago, actually, obviously I mentioned this, the student rule change, which if you're looking at hiring students, everyone's probably seen it because it's a very kind of a lot easier route and it's a lot cheaper. So obviously that changed, and since that's changed, yeah, so I'm saying a Monday because there was no Monday, but 3 weeks ago, I'm estimating that the rule changed for students. Before that Monday, students could basically apply for a skilled visa and then get accepted. They'll be given 5 years for the visa admin fee, which is $199, compared to, for a big organisation, you pay £1,000 per year of sponsorship. So if you think about it, it's $5,000 cheaper than what it would have been, and you get work over 5 years. They get permanent residency, and it was just a straight swap. Now it's changed, where they have to be, their attendance has to be good. They have to pass their graduate degree, and they also now can't bring their dependents over. So that basically all changed, and while that changed, things fell out the woodwork where the company were using, which I have actually asked specifically, are they being charged anything or we being charged anything? They said no. Turns out that after this all happened, I didn't give the visa in the time before the date. This person broke down and said how much they'd been charged just to be placed with us.
And how much was that? What were you talking?
So they'll charge £6,000 to £8,000. I think £2,000 was just have an interview with Apex, and then when they're confirmed to have a job, it was a further 4 or another 6. In terms of where these people come from, I think the person that actually gave the 6 came out of her grandma's pension. And then we've actually had to book her a flight home today because all the visa kind of fell apart, and obviously we offered a sponsorship, but because of all the exchange, it just didn't come apparent. So yeah, she's actually flying back from Nepal. I saw an email earlier about us booking her flight to Kathmandu. So
that's terrible. Look, 6 to 8 grand. And so there's basically companies going out there and they're making a killing off this interview process. And are these individuals having to go away and get licensed, get loans? And
apparently, yeah. I think, she came over on a student visa. I don't know if the fact that student rules have changed, I think people were exploiting people because of this. And it's so new that when I called the police about this, they actually said they had no investigation. I then brought up a Skills for Care or a Home Care Association article saying how this is against the Modern Slavery Act 2023. And after I said that, I'd emailed the officer this article, and then he called me back saying he does have grounds for an investigation. So yeah, I think it's so new, so fresh, and people are just so unaware that if the police aren't aware that nothing else is being reported, so how are care providers going to know?
Aaron, I'd love to bring you in on this as well. What's your view?
Yeah, I mean, we looking at it just from a business point of view, you really need to be making sure that our way of recruiting is an employer pays form of recruitment and recruitment pathway. That means that the airfare then pays for the airfare, the work permits, the recruitment fees, all of the training, obviously, before they come out. And like I said from the beginning, it's a very expensive process. You're looking at around 20% of whatever that person's annual salary is, whether in nurse, an OT, PT, midwife, rad tech, care worker, senior care work, and you multiply that over 120. It's a serious investment. But it can be very easy to be approached by an agent, and there is unfortunately a lot of blind eye turning, people not asking the right questions, and we've got a very good relationship with the Philippine Embassy and the Labour Attaché in the Philippines, because unfortunately with the Filipino staff there is nowhere to go. So they go to the police, and the police are unaware. They pass it off to another sector, maybe the Gangmasters Labour Abuse Authority. They don't have, they've got a lot on, and they can't react as quickly as they'd like to. CQC can't necessarily react on this as well. So it ends up going to the Labour Attaché, and Ben and I were with her this morning actually discussing some of the issues, and BMB will assist some of these abused staff who have come over under false pretenses, or there's contract swapping, and actually £6,000 in the industry isn't for a job for an overseas vulnerable staff member to be exploited. It's actually quite small. You're looking sometimes at 10,000 or 15,000. They're taking massive loans out, putting families' property on collateral. It's a huge amount of money, and then they come in and they're having to work not to save money or save for themselves, or we've already said it's very expensive in the UK once you pay tax and transport and accommodation, but actually they're paying back at extremely high rates of interest. Some of them, the agencies, are actually the ones who loaned the money, so they're it's compacted. So it's very, very bad. But what we say and what has been our success for the longevity and the success of our clients in retaining the staff is actually the business value of ethical recruitment, which is if you're covering all of the costs, then you can actually recruit the most qualified individual for the job, not the person who can afford the job, not the person who has the means to take out collateral, take out these loans, who might have, wealthy family members, because that really does narrow. So that's from a business point of view. But then the ethical point of actually wanting to do the right thing, it shouldn't be a no-brainer. But if you're being approached by an agent who's saying, we can get you somebody for free, you need to be asking very, very difficult questions of that agent, because they are really, whilst things are a little bit open right now, they're making the most of it.
It's it's horrible. It's heartbreaking to hear, especially people taking out loans, drawing down on pensions. That's terrible. So if we are going to do this the right way, and as I said, that's something that's important, what are the questions that these providers should be asking?
Well, I asked this question. I asked the question, not only did I make sure the person that referred the applicant to me not be on the interview, I was there with the person interviewing, and I asked all these questions, and they said nothing.
They're scared.
They are so scared. You won't know. The only reason this happened is because the job fell apart and this rule changed. So with the rule change, you're probably not going to get it as much, because they can't just swap visa. They can't just come in. You might get them where they're doing it when in their actual own country, and we do it the normal route. Then they might be charged money then. But how do you know that, when there's somewhere that's not got a system or isn't as we're very lucky with how safe we are, especially when you're in a country like that. You don't know. I ask these questions, which is another thing which I didn't get there.
So I'm kind of looking for some answers here. If someone's watching this now, they're thinking they don't want to put someone through that. They don't want to take someone on board, and then all of a sudden they realize, wow, they've got all these loans.
Well, CQC is on us, on our backs, 24/7. And I know I get why, but why the agent is not the same? Well, there are people bringing over from vulnerable places, coming over here for a job. Why are they not audited the same way we are?
Mm-hmm.
And also being a sponsor, the amount of paperwork I have to do just to keep them here. I have to update their location, all the things you should have to do anyway, but I'm doing all of that. The people sourcing them don't do anything. They source them, give me the details, all the kind of risk is on my back. All the kind of responsibility is on my back, and all the costs. Yeah, we pay the costs and basically help the communities and help the councils here provide the care. But in terms of the risk, is all on us. When the agent, example, obviously Aaron's got good ethical background and good kind of ethical practices, but every person that's got a bit of money right now is where are they going to go? What's recession proof? Social care. What's recession proof without recruitment, without risk? An agency bringing them over from a different country.
So Aaron, from a care provider's point of view, and you being an agent, what questions should care providers be asking agents to identify?
I mean, like Ben said, you can ask all the questions in the world, but if they want to give you the answers, if they are feeding the answers to the to the candidate, then they can give you anything. The key is do your homework, do your due diligence, talk to, do testimonials. I give Ben's email out to our other clients. I invite them to do their testimonials and to do their homework. So that's the only way you're going to know. And we're very, very transparent with that from the first time we meet them. Also, meet them face to face as well. Anyone, you don't even know where these people are, where they are Zoom. But if you can actually tell a lot, your listeners are all business people. They have to be in the same room as them to really get the vibe and see if they're for real, right? So that's why we can do an initial conversation. And from our point of view, we need to make sure that our clients are the right partners for us. We're selective with who we work with, because we want to make sure that we've got obligation to our candidates and their families. We need to make sure that they're going to the right place. So we have to do a dance. They check us out, we check them out. So that's really, really very important. On the part of the accountability, there's no accountability really, unfortunately, with the agents. We very important. You do make sure your agent is signed up to the NHS international recruitment best practice. But we would welcome some form of certification or credentialing in our industry. In Canada, for every province that we are working in, so BC and Alberta, we're audited every year. We have to sign up. We actually pay $20,000 fee that stays in an account, and if you do break the law or you do have to pay fines, that's where the money comes from. So it just shows that you can be serious. You don't just start a company and then all of a sudden you're an international recruiter. It shows intent. But luckily we did that, and we're able to bring some of those practices over to what we do. But yeah, it's all actually the people who are auditing is the employers. It's on the employers to actually choose which is the best practice and which recruiters to.
I would pull out from that. You want to do your research, know that this isn't a company that's popped out from nowhere, know that they have testimonials from other care providers.
Talk to them.
Also, it will be, I think from my perspective, it would be great to get testimonials from people who have come from overseas to actually understand, I'm in a great place, they've done what they said they were going to do. That's super important. But I really did want to touch on that because it's an elephant in the room in the sector.
100%.
Yeah, but let's talk about the future. Now you really got this new route of recruiting, you've got processes in place. Earlier you were joking, saying like, wow, processes are so slick, it's like nothing to do.
Yeah.
What does the future look like?
Well, obviously, overseas recruiting is what we've fallen back on because the amount of vacancies. If there was actually the limelight that care workers deserve, we wouldn't need this. The pay should be correct, like just the kind of like what they should be looked at, the same level as NHS, then we wouldn't need this. But obviously we do. So it is going to go that way. At the moment, I just think it just needs some kind of monitoring, and we're bringing a lot of people over and we're getting an awful lot of inquiries every day. Like, I'm not getting the 40 hours I was promised. Can I come to you? I don't know if that's through reputation that we've got quite a lot of overseas with us already, but the fact is that the amount of inquiries I'm getting is unbelievable. The amount of people that aren't getting their 40 hours. So that in itself, just imagine if like these people that aren't just setting up care agencies because they can with money and because you're not audited or by CQC for at least the first couple of years. So how do you know that it's ethical with the people that just joined the market? Because they're not aware of these things either. So ideally, I'd like a mix of both. I'd like the limelight to be put on the care workers like it's deserved.
Brilliant. So there's something came to mind that you were just talking. I was going to ask you the final question. I will be wrapping up. I could talk to you guys very well. Aaron, I want to ask you this: with so many people flogging to the UK, let's take from the Philippines, a part of me kind of feels, aren't we taken away from the nurses who are there in that country and they're coming here? What would you say around that?
Well, it's a difficult one. There's nurses that are over there, and in the town where we're from, Iloilo, in where one of our offices are in the Philippines, it's not a huge city. It's probably 300,000-400,000, but we've got 13 universities, all of them medical schools. And so we are Filipinos. We're creating more nurses than we would need, unfortunately. And that's really just the culture of it, being a caring and compassionate culture. Going into nursing is standard, but also it's a way to leave the country and to go out. So the NHS have got red list countries that they've looked at to say, if you are recruiting from these certain countries, you're putting a stress and a strain on their healthcare, on their healthcare. So the Philippines is off that, and a few of the other countries are that you might not expect. So the other thing as well is, for every individual that you bring over, you're actually helping 25, 30 people overseas. They're sending back money to pay for brothers, sisters, nephews, nieces, cousins to go to school and continue that. You're sending money to sometimes fund other business projects. You're sending money to build houses back home for parents and to provide care, and you can actually even afford to pay for for a family member to or a care to look after your parents in the home setting, which is what's called truly normal overseas. So there's a little bit of nuance to that question, but overall, if you're bringing the person over correctly, giving them the opportunity to stay and then send money back to the Philippines, that's really overall a benefit to the country and to the families that you're helping.
Smashing. So there's a new part of the show, and what it is at the very end, I ask every single guest, forgetting about the how, if there was one thing you would implement in the care sector to make a positive impact, what would it be? And I'd love you both to answer that.
Recognition and pay.
Tell me a little.
Just that it's not paid enough. Hey, you can't get paid the same as you work in Audi for looking after someone, providing personal care. My kind of outlook on it is NHS, yeah, they do a great thing, and I'm not going to knock that, but they basically look after someone and then send them home. Where do they go to? The carers. Their whole life is with a carer and then they die. So yeah, no recognition of that at all.
All right.
Again, specifically for international recruitment, accountability on the side of international recruiting agencies, just oversight to provide assurance to care providers and to the candidates overseas.
Smashing. Well, look, I can talk to you guys all day long. Thank you so much for joining the show. There's a lot in there, so just really appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks.
Thanks for tuning in to Tea with Toby. If you found this episode useful, don't forget to share it with one of your colleagues from the sector. And if you have any questions, drop me an email at team@prosperwell.co.uk. If you're new to Tea with Toby, do check out previous episodes in the season, and also look out for future ones. Tea with Toby is produced by specialist care sector digital marketing agency Prosperwell, caring for the brands that care for others.
Tea with Toby, 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 tea with Toby.